Okie dokie. It says we're live. And so welcome to the Fast Freedom Formula almost weekly live video. I don't think I've been on for 2 weeks, but it's okay. My special guest today is a friend and colleague slash cohort, Beth Hess. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
And I'm just going to gush about her for a moment and then just like let her talk. And like when you're going from like seeing people one-on-one, or you might do a class or something like that, and going to a online type business, I don't know if it's true for everybody else, but I was kind of like, and didn't really know what to say. And I've never been accused of not having anything to say, but for whatever reason, when I started doing whatever it was that I was doing, I seemed to get real stiff and real stoic and real, excuse me, while I put my glasses on and I have my lab coat, and here, let me talk to you in this type of voice. And boring, like seriously boring. So I wanted to say thank you, Beth. You like really like turned a corner. And you were on another video who was also with a friend of mine on Knowledge to Profits. And I was sitting there watching this show thinking, you know what? I'll bet you could help other people that not necessarily, you know, they have a business or whatever it is, but maybe they just have something to say, but they don't really know how to say it. Or maybe, you know, it's even on a smaller level of that they really want to communicate with their kids, or they really want to communicate with their spousal unit or their family. So I thought I'd drag you on the show and say, you do that too, right?
I do. I'm the word girl. And which really means communication and you know, the way that we connect with each other using our words. We've all been in situations where we've been misunderstood by the words that we use, or the tone that we use when we say them. And you know, I've realized at this point in my career path that helping people put their amazingness into words is my calling. And you know, I like to say I've been telling other people's stories for a very long time. I'm a long time journalist, reporter, editor, that type of thing. So involved in the publishing industry. And so all of that is always about what information can you pull out of people for them to explain themselves, so to speak. And then communicate that in a way that is interesting to other people. And so we all have to do that in lots and lots of ways all the time. Like you said, I happen to work most with business owners around their messaging and marketing, like you and I are together. But that same idea, you know, sales and marketing is really just, we're in the motivation business. We're in the getting people to move business. And I like to say, if you have ever tried to get a toddler to put on a raincoat, you too are in the sales business. Right? Because if sales and marketing is all about that, getting people to act in a direction that you think will be good for them, then I'm sure we can all think of different situations that that applies to in our life.
Well, one of the things I was thinking of, I mean, I've done a lot of like working with couples, and it is always amazing me when these couples come in and like one of them talks, the other one doesn't talk, and frequently the one that does talk is just like, you know, just talk to me. You know, and frequently that person that they're trying to get, whether it's male or female, is extremely kinesthetic, and it takes them time to like take the information in, and then it rolls around at their feet, and then it comes back up, and
Yeah.
maybe, just maybe, it comes out in one whole sentence. You know what I mean? So how would you work with someone like that, that they feel deeply,
Mm.
but they don't, they have difficulty finding their words?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you and I have talked before about, learning styles and also just the way that we process things. And it does seem that for whatever reason, the universe likes to pair up the verbal processors with the internal processors, right? Um, and that's where a lot of conflicts can come. But a lot of it goes back to an idea that you sort of mentioned at the beginning, this idea that a lot of times we don't even know ourselves
Mhm.
because we just do what we do. We don't think about how other people might approach situations. And we're not even very good at, even those who would call themselves extroverts or verbal type of people aren't necessarily really that good at expressing what they're trying to say because we know what it sounds like in our heads. We know what we mean. And so one of the first places, and I think this is where my journalism skills come into play, right? Is because I'm trained and practiced in asking the questions and then following up if I don't understand the answer, and or asking the question a slightly different way. Um, and so just some of those things, I'm not a couples counselor, obviously here,
You don't
but
want to be.
no, no. Um, but just some of those, wait a minute, am I just saying this because it's what I think to be true, or is it really true?
Mhm.
And how you're perceived by other people in the branding business. Um, we call this that, your brand is really what other people say about you.
Mhm.
Your job as a business is to make sure that what they say about you is what you want to have said,
Mhm.
right? It's the same thing in any kind of relationship.
Mhm.
So when a partner or a child or whatever says you are this way, the no I'm not is not as helpful as the okay, let's step back and examine some of these things. So sometimes I call myself a professional question asker
Mhm.
because in a lot of ways, even when you and I talked about how you do your business and what makes you
Mhm.
different, um, it was about you discovering for yourself based on the questions asked
Mhm.
who you really are and getting more clear and specific about that.
Which was really helpful, by the way.
Good, good.
All
And,
right.
and
I was gonna throw you another curveball.
yeah, go for it.
Okay. There are a lot of people out there because we have become a computer driven society, and over the past 25 years we've gotten further and further and further away from sensory based language,
Mm,
for efficiency, to prevent lawsuits, and various other reasons, so that there are also people, I'm gonna use like perfect NLP speak. There are people out there who are very auditory digital in their language. And yeah, think accountant, think CFO of some corporation, and they come in, or get them on a call, and you've got this man or this woman, and they are giving data, and you can ask them a question, they'll go, let's see, they'll give you a data-based answer with zero calibration of how those words affect even them. And they have no clue whatsoever how it impacts other people. And I have a memory. It was actually when my father was in the hospital dying of pancreatic cancer, and I had had enough. So I was out wandering the hallways, and I see this guy, and I can't recall his name, but he was a cytologist, which means he was a doctor of cellular biology. And he's standing there talking to this family, and this woman is completely bereft with what is happening with whatever dependent that she had going on. And this guy was like literally standing there with his hands folded, and he would talk to her, and she would start bawling again, and he would stop talking. And when she caught her breath, he would start talking again. And I watched all of this in about 10 seconds of walking by going, this guy has no freaking clue that his communication is not helping at all.
Yeah. And that's kind of a situation where he has to, in his type of work, he's going to encounter all types of people who receive things on the other end too, right? And so you do have to, if you're in a position like that, you do have to learn to consider the response. You have to learn how to read the room, so to speak. And you have to learn some skills to adapt to those types of situations. And that's, that's hard. I would argue though too, that most of us, whether we're trying to build business relationships, personal relationships, making more friends at the country club, any of those types of things, right? Most of us actually get to choose what type of people we want to interact with, what kind of people we most enjoy interacting with. And those may or may not be people that are exactly like us. In fact, as we've already proven, a lot of times they're different than us in some respect, right? So my point there is that, most marketing people, most relationship type of experts will say, well, you make connections with people by speaking their language or connecting in their language in some way. And I would say that that is true to a point. But I'm going to argue that it's just as important that you don't lose your own language in the process. That any good relationship, business or personal, is based on the coming together of two different personality types, right? Yeah. And making that effective. And that's the number one thing that I see, especially in business owners, is they're trying to do too much of the change into who the person in front of me wants me to be, instead of just being who they are, paying attention to who they attract, and then deciding, okay, is this who I want to attract or not? Much like you would if, I know we're both happily married, but let's pretend that there was a time in our life when we were at some sort of local establishment where maybe we were looking for a date. Let's get in the Wayback Machine and just pretend for a moment, right? Right? Like, you start to notice, wait, I'm attracting, when I behave this way, I attract these kind of people who want to spend more time with me.
Mm,
Is that who I want or not?
mm.
And then how do I change my behavior, my words, my speech to more likely attract the people that I really want to have? And that's all messaging and marketing is. That's exactly how I look at messaging and marketing.
That's a great analogy. Okay, I'm gonna throw you another. Yeah, apparently we're playing baseball.
Okay, I
Okay,
love baseball. Let's do it.
excellent. So your next curveball is going to be, I don't know if you've noticed the difference between boy toddler sports and girl toddler sports. We'll pick soccer for an example. And having 4 daughters, I've had the opportunity, so you've got this look, and toddler or kid soccer, before they hit about 7 or 8 years old, they all move in a herd like this. But there's some interesting dynamics. For example, if one of the girls gets bumped or injured or knocked down or whatever it is, the game stops and nothing happens until that young athlete is okay. Then her team members are okay and the game ensues. Conversely, you have boys, okay? Boys rough and tumble. I don't care if I get bad press for stereotyping, because it's okay. If a boy gets knocked down, they drag him off the field because bleeding, it could be fun, and chicks dig scars, and the game ensues. So if you were going to coach a coach of a male and or female team, would your advice be different?
Yes and no. And let me share a real quick story. This is my fouling a few balls off while I swing at the one I want. My son, who is now 17, when he was 2, and so toddling around kind of stage, my sister and niece came to visit, and my niece was also 2. They're 5 months apart in age. Okay. And our yard at the time had a bunch of azalea bushes that were in bloom that time of year. And nearly simultaneously, my sister and I look up. We notice my niece is bent over smelling the flowers. My son has a stick and is hitting the flowers, right? Yes. So very different approaches, even at a young age. I think that if I were asked to coach coaches of teams, I would start like I do with any type of coaching experience, and just say, what do you want your players to learn from you most? What are the values that you want to instill in them? What are what do you want them to remember 10 years from now about what they learned from you? Is winning going to be most important? Is teamwork most important? All those types of things. And then, of course, you have to take into account the natural inclinations of the people on your team. And as you know, when they're little, you have boys and girls on the same team kind of thing. But it's not always as simple as boys and girls, as right? So what you're really talking about is that separation of styles that people have, whether it's the way boys and girls tend to play sports, or it's the way they learn, the way they talk. So it's that, how are you going to get different people to that same end goal? Am I kind of going in the direction that you thought I might? Or
I just asked the question.
You didn't know.
I just threw you into the pool to see if you could swim.
Yeah. But for me, it always goes back to that, okay, what are we trying to get them to learn here? Because if the value you're trying to teach is teamwork, then based on your assertion, You might have a harder lesson or time with that with the boys than you might with the girls. But you know, if the lesson is you fall down, you get back up, then you have to teach it a different way. So you have to know what your intent is. What are you trying to get people to? And I think one of the things that we forget, going back to that dating analogy again, bringing it into a business framework, is that I see a lot of business owners who think that their end goal is to make a sale. But the people that I work with, the people I think you're most connected to work with, are those who know that no, actually the end is the transformation of a person.
Yeah, I don't really have, I don't do a lot of sales, and I don't like have customers. What I have is friends and rabid fans. You know,
Right.
I've got clients I've had for 20 years.
Yeah.
And
so
they're not doing the same thing that they did when they got started.
Right.
But they have, you know, it is a transformation, not only for them, but also for myself.
So when you know that your end goal, and there can be multiple, but one of your end goals is rabid fans, then you can reverse engineer from that who is most likely to become a rabid fan. Maybe not in one session, maybe, you know, whatever. And what do those people need to believe? What do they need to trust about you? What do they need to know about themselves? What do they need to understand about your process? Right? You can reverse engineer all of that and then message your content to that from the beginning, so that you filter out all the people that you're like, well, I could sell it to you, but it's not going to work. Because
how would you apply this? Okay, let's go back to dating. How would you apply that model? Okay, if you were coaching a young man or a young woman, and you were coaching them, and how would you put that into words?
Yeah, I would say, what are your deal breakers? Right. And you know, again, not every relationship has to end in forever. That is the model a lot of people are looking for, but knowing what you're looking for is going to determine, you know, if it's no, I just need a date to my cousin's wedding, you have a different set of values right. But knowing what you're going after, just like, you know, in the fitness industry, if somebody has a particular race they're training for, if they're going to do a triathlon, they train for that differently than if they were going to do a swimming only race. Or they train differently than if they were going to do a sprint, right? So you have to know what you're training for. Okay. So it's the same thing in business or personal relationships. What is the medal you're trying to win? Okay. So in a personal relationship, what are your deal breakers? And I'm not saying that means that you have to unload and make that awkward in the very first date or even in your dating profile, right? Like, I'm not saying you get super weird about all that, but if you can't imagine not having a dog in your house, you will always have a dog. You love dogs. You know, even one dog might be enough. You know from the beginning that you can't get in a long-term relationship with someone who doesn't like dogs. It's not overcomable. Right? So absolutely. You have to talk about your dog on the first date and see what happens, right? Like, don't invest enough in the relationship that you get yourself too far into things,
Mhm.
right? Don't bring up don't, and sure as heck don't let the first time they hear about the dog be when it brings the ring down the aisle as the ring bearer at your wedding, kind of thing, right? So we're trying not to bring surprises on people,
Mhm.
because if we're looking for mutually beneficial, mutually satisfying relationships, then we both need to have places that we can get off that path
Mhm.
where it's natural and before we get too
Mhm.
far.
All right, we have a couple of minutes left.
Okay.
Okay, this is my final. I'm gonna throw you a knuckleball.
Okay.
Okay, because we're doing baseball analogies today. Okay, tell a quickie story, no names, of course, of who you thought was your most challenging customer. Could be personal, could be business, could be whatever. And the whole time you were just going, they're not getting this. And they just went, oh, boom, I got it.
Um, I think sometimes the hardest clients are those who are already successful. um, and I say that hesitantly because you do have to have a little bit of, you have to know yourself a little bit
Mhm.
to know what you want to change and what you don't, right?
Mhm.
Like I tell people, I don't teach parenting classes for people who haven't had the baby yet, because we've all been the best. We're all the most amazing parents you've ever seen until we have a child.
Mhm.
I'm like, I want to work with people that have a 3-year-old, and now we'll talk about your parenting style.
Mhm.
That makes sense? You tracking that analogy with me?
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So it's always challenging when people, and I'm sure you see this in the fitness industry too, right? People who say they want to change an outcome, but do not want to change the input. And, um, and so a lot of that takes very gentle question asking from me until that light bulb comes on where they go, oh, that's how people perceive what I'm saying.
Mhm.
I didn't realize people thought of it that way. I
Mhm.
never thought about it in those terms,
Mhm.
right? Um, and so I've I've had a couple of clients that have just dug in their heels a little bit more and just sort of said the same generic thing to me over and over and over.
Mhm.
Or like you and I have talked about before, they're giving me the answers, right? Like if we were to look up how to talk about your weaknesses in a job interview, we could find a little pattern.
Mhm.
When you can tell someone is reciting the script to you,
Mhm.
then I know I'm not getting the
Yeah,
whole story.
cool.
And yeah. So once you've broken out of that, well, I think I'm supposed to say it like this, and you become more of this just feels natural
Mhm.
to me and who I am, whether you're talking about your business, whether you're talking about your brand, whether you're talking about yourself, whether you're talking about a charity that you really believe in and you want people to contribute to. The more, I'll sum it up like this, the more that conversation becomes the way you would say it every day and less like you're giving a speech, the more impact you're going to have.
Outstanding. Well, first of all, I want to, yeah, drop the mic. I do want to thank you for coming on. It is apparent to me that you and I could talk for hours, but let's reel it in just a
Sounds
little
good.
bit. And I want you to tell these lovely viewers how to get a hold of you.
Mhm.
And if you're feeling bold, you have something coming up on in October that they may want to know about? Go.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. So the name of my company is Keys to Your Brand. So keystoyourbrand.com is a great place to learn a lot about me. My company is called that because I believe it's my job to help you unlock your own blocks so that you can come out of your own places. I can drop some keys. You got to pick them up, use them, and make them your own. Most of my online conversation happens in a private Facebook group, which is the one that Michael tagged earlier. It's called Unlocked Brands. You can certainly link to that from the website or find me in the Facebook groups under Unlocked Brands, and I can drop that link in this chat again as well for everyone. Would love to invite anyone with a business or in the marketing industry specifically is who that's for, to come on over and hang out with us there. And then starting October the 13th, which sounds like a long way away, but we know how fast time moves. I will be taking a small group of people. I'm limiting it to just 8 folks because I want this to be a good group intensive get deep experience. And we're going to go through what I call the 6 key questions that your messaging must answer. So not in a theoretical kind of way, but in a how does my brand answer these questions kind of way, at the end of which you will have written a good amount of content that could be used on your website, could be on social media. I will also share with you along the way how I turned some of my language into a brand manifesto and invite you to kind of actually put together a manifesto or creed for what your brand and company believes as we go along. But we will unlock your brand DNA so that you can replicate it in your messaging from that point forward. So that information will be on my website shortly, but also talk about it in that Facebook group. So you'll be able to learn about it in both of those places.
Outstanding. Well, thank you again for coming on.
Thank you.
And if you don't mind, I'm going to be bold and invite you back the week that your thing starts.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Okay, because there's nothing I enjoy more than like gratuitous over promotion of things. So
I
thanks
appreciate
everybody, and we'll see you next week or probably next week for the almost live show. Please join if you have an opportunity. Please join the Fast Freedom Formula Facebook group. You can always send me a message or you'll just comment in any of the posts. And so we'll talk to you later.